story is Bradley Beal is willing to waive his no trade clause to play for the Sacramento Kings. Again, whether there have been talks about a trade, I don't know. I know there have been talks about the Kings acquiring OG Anunoby. I know the Kings are attempting to acquire OG Anunoby.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, is a far more realistic scenario than one involving Washington, Bradley Beal, and the $200 million that comes back with him.
Yeah, I would, for what it would cost, I would prefer the OG deal. And to your point, it's a little bit more of a seamless fit. I agree with you on that. You just plug OG into that small forward spot. You keep Keegan at the 4. OG would be able to help with defending some 4s and rebounding and things of that nature. So I think it'd be just real seamless. You wouldn't have to give up as much, and it kind of fits.
I literally think it's a fraction. Like, it's significantly less.
According to what we said for Brad.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I guess
half.
it is.
You keep Kevin and Keegan.
Yep.
And Rashawn and Davion go, and you probably give up a pick as well.
Yeah.
Pick or 2. I don't know if I wouldn't.
I think it's 1.
Yeah, I think it's 1.
Yeah, I think it's 1. And I don't remember if you asked this about Brad or OG. I don't think it's 24.
I had about OG. You said, so you're saying
it's
no
not, to me, it's not a deal breaker. I'd push for it not to be this year. I'd push for it to be however I can work things out with Atlanta and make that right. I'd push for it to be then, but I would fight to keep the pick in 7 days.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd fight that hard, but I'd fight. I'd like, maintain and improve. I think there's some improvement with OG Anunoby, but you don't want to throw it all on his shoulders. Right. And in that situation, we go with your scenario of Rashawn and Davion. You have Keegan, now you have OG. Harrison's gone. That's, I mean, unless someone can work out a scenario where that's not true, I can't make the math.
Right.
Like, Harrison is gone in that situation. I feel like you need the number 24. So you also lost De'Aaron's backup.
Yes. So here's the thing about 24, especially in this draft, with some of the things that we've seen and heard and read leading up to this draft. There is a scenario where 24 may be no different than what you get at 37. You know what I mean? So it's not like you got the 15th pick and then your next pick is 34. It's like, oh man, I'm falling in class as far as who I'd be able to pick. I feel you can make the argument that who you pick at 24 is going to be in the same level in the same class of who you pick at 38. I think they have the pick. I think that's 14 picks later. Because if we've seen guys from 19 to 55, all over the place, like you could move on from 24 and still get your backup point guard or somebody like that, the same caliber of guy that you would get at 24. Possibly. I'm just making an argument. I don't know if that's actually, what it would look like, but I could make the argument you're getting the same caliber guy at 38. Because you're at 24.
Maybe it would depend on, you're listening to D-Lo and Casey on KIFM West Sacramento, 98.5 FM, KRX QHD2 Sacramento, ESPN 1320. Always live on the free Odyssey app, live on twitch.tv/ESPN 1320 and youtube.com/ESPN 1320 as well. Maybe it would depend on Monty and Wes and that front office's examination of this draft. How do they feel? Like, on a scale, I don't mean to use this analogy as much as I do, but on a scale from, 1 to 10, how do you rate the player you like at 24 versus the player you like at 30? Would you say 36, 37,
38?
38?
I think it's 38.
Like, how do you comp those two? How do you rank those two? How do you, how do you think the guy that you like, or maybe, and you can't even do, because it is, as you laid out a second ago, you can't even do the guy you like at 24. It has to be like the 8 guys that you like at 24, given that we've seen different players' names all over the board here. what's the group of players that you like at 24 and how you think they can impact the team versus the group of players at 38 and how you think they can impact the team.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that, if we're getting into a trade discussion with the Toronto Raptors, maybe that becomes a factor.
Yeah.
And if you really like your group of players at 24, you have to fight hard to keep that pick. You got to work with Atlanta. James can explain better than I can how that might work, but you got to work with Atlanta to remove pick protections and just trade your next allowable pick.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if you're Toronto, you don't look at it as the worst thing as getting a pick later on in Sacramento, because Sacramento, is anyone looking at them as a long-term dynasty? Are they looking at this team as being long-term successful? There are plenty of people probably within the league who think, this thing's going to fall apart at some point. They might think the Kings played over their head last year.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that says that's not true, and we could talk about that. But maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing. And I don't know the years. I can't remember. But maybe Toronto would take a 2028, I guess.
3, 4, 5. I think that would be.
I don't know.
Maybe it's 6.
I don't know. I can't remember.
6.
I don't remember how long the protections are there.
The protections
they're there. There's nothing this year, so it doesn't even start till next year.
Right. So I think
you just got to remove the protections.
You got to remove the protections. That doesn't help you trying to make moves. But I honestly believe the protections will be off immediately. I think it's like top 12 protected next year. The Kings should be drafting later than the 12th spot next year. This whole, all of this with OG, Bradley Beal, it tells us, like you mentioned, Monty McNair, they're ready to get aggressive and make some moves.
Yep.
They see the opportunity. There's a lot of people. We talked to a lot of people during that Warrior series. You've seen it tweeted out or people writing about it or whatever, who look at the Kings, where you just said some people look at the Kings like, oh, this will, the fairy tale end at some point. I think there are people who like that, who think like that. But there are people who look at it, and I've seen this a number of times, and it's been told to the both of us, they're a wing away from it being spooky hours in Sacramento. They're a wing away. And I think Monty feels that way. I think that front office feels that way. If they can get some action on the wing, OG, Brad is different type of wing than maybe they're looking for, but still that impact type of player. They got an opportunity. They got an opportunity right now to get to the NBA Finals next year.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. There's no right now. Things could change a week from today. Things could change 2 weeks from tomorrow. But right now, this team is in a great position. And I can't imagine. I mean, there's deals out there to be made. There are guys, there's obviously the James Harden stuff. There's the Kyrie Irving stuff. I believe there's going to be some interesting dialogue involving Tyler Hero. The thing I can't get over with the Bradley Beal stuff that came out yesterday is, why did it get out? Like, why was that put out there? And I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibility that Bradley Beal is traded. I just don't know that you would put that out there. Oh, they're working together in case the Wizards go in this direction.
Right.
Well, it could have been Bradley. And what good agencies do? It could have been Bradley Beal's agent who was like, "Yeah, we're working with Washington. If they decide to go in a certain direction, we're going to work together on a trade destination."
Right.
The caveat, the whole non-story part to this is they don't have a choice. They being the Washington Wizards, they literally do not have a choice because Brad is the lone player in the league with a no trade clause. The story we brought to you today was that Bradley Beal would waive his no trade clause for Sacramento. I'm sure he would waive it for Portland. I'm very confident he'd waive it for Miami, but Miami's coming off the heels of I'm not positive he'd waive it for Portland, but I guess it would depend on what that deal looked like. I think he would do it for Miami, but the story we had today is that he would do it for Sacramento.
So you understand these things and you've experienced these things more than I have. But to answer your question, I feel like these things are coming from Brad's camp, and Brad is ready to move. The only reason why I say that is because of what we heard today. This is 2 straight days of Bradley Beal trade talk. Washington wouldn't put out what we put out today.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's the agency, that's Brad's camp, and that's Brad essentially.
He's creating conversations.
I think he's ready. I think that's a sign to me that he's ready to move on.
And what's that do? It gets Miami, Sacramento, Portland, New York to call Miami, or excuse me, call Washington to get a conversation started and get trade offers flowing in to where Michael Winger and that staff can go to Bradley Beal and his agent and say, hey, we've got this deal from Miami that we will. Hey, we got this deal from Sacramento we really like. How do you feel about this? Let's get Kamara in here, 916-909-1320. Kamara, what's happening, baby?
What's going on? It's a long time no speak, guys.
I know, man. Where you been at, man? Oh, you probably went to go see
all
Beyonce.
over the world.
Yeah, you went to go. I just remember Beyonce was in, she was in Paris. That's where he was in. My bad.
Now, first of all, concerts in like a few weeks, but I have actually called you guys, but you guys don't take my calls because
Oh, that doesn't sound.
Are you out of your mind?
That damn Jesse. That damn Jesse.
Jesse's gatekeeping over it. He's gatekeeping. One time I actually called to talk boxing with Kenny. But
I'm always down for that. 13th round, actually.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a couple of weeks. So that's the big fight coming up.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the matter at hand, though. Number one, I was going to say, and you guys already called it, it's clearly a story generated out of an agent story because you look at the GM who was just hired for Washington. He came from OKC, Will Dawkins. And, OKC is known for the way they don't, that camp is known for the way they don't release information. And the same thing with Monty McNair. You don't hear about what Monty's going to do until Monty does it. So you have these two type of personnel or the personalities rather in the GM's front office who are not used to releasing information. So clearly this is just a story that's designed to generate interest. Number two, it doesn't fit with the long-range timeline of the Kings because financially you're looking at a $57 million contract at one point, or $57 million a year contract. And, you think about Sabonis he's going to be super max. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Third, and I'll take this, or you guys can give me your feedback. I know you guys say we're a wing away, and OG has been the popular opinion. I'm actually a Pascal Siakam person. I think he can provide a better dynamic on our team. We need a defensive long presence at the 4 spot. He kind of could be like that Aaron Gordon, playmaker that we're looking for. And Damian, privately, how I feel about Denver and how I've always thought that Denver was a team that the Kings should pattern themselves after as far as dynamic. And I'm so happy they won a title because of Mike Malone and all that other stuff. But, what are your guys' thoughts about that?
Yeah, I like Pascal Siakam too. He's one of the reasons OG, the Fred VanVleet situation has already kind of played itself out. Yeah. It's why that Toronto team is so intriguing. They have a squad, like they have good players. It didn't work.
All right.
Your guess is as good as mine as to why it didn't. I think you've called their roster redundant before, and maybe that's accurate. But I like Siakam. I probably more expensive of an acquisition, than OG would. He's 37 this year. He's an unrestricted free agent next year. He's 29 years old. I don't know. I don't have the same love for Siakam that Kamara has, but don't hate it.
No, and the one thing, like I talked about the other day, is you got to be able to shoot the basketball. And I don't know if OG falls into that. He's an adequate 3-point shooter. He's not lights out, but he's an adequate 3-point shooter. And Siakam isn't bad either. But you talk about bringing him over with Sabonis in the style of play. Is Siakam that type of guy that can space the floor? I don't know if he can to that degree. He can hit some threes for you, but I don't know if he's a floor spacer like that. So that's something that would be a concern with Pascal, but that'll probably be the only thing. I like his game a lot. You know, I love what he brings to the table for any team that he's on. But that also would be you as the Sacramento Kings saying for sure, we think, scratch that.
Mm-hmm.
We know
Yep.
Keegan Murray is a 3.
Yep.
And I don't know if you know that right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you think you know, but you don't know. All right. So that anybody that you bring in at the 4, that's the declaration that you're making as an organization that we're willing to move forward with Keegan Murray as our small forward.
And that's a pretty strong declaration 1 year in.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously tried it. Like we saw Keegan at the 3 at times, particularly earlier in the season.
And he got better. As the season went along, in my opinion, he got better there. But I still don't know.
Yeah, in both of those scenarios, though, there's no return of Harrison Barnes.
Right.
Whether it be Siakam or OG Anunoby.